The Alleyman Podcast, Episode 11, the finale.
Welcome to Modern Mythologies. I'm your guest, Fred Pennyland, and your host, Dr. Okoye, is getting audio files all lined up for us like a good little host. On this, the final episode of the Alleyman mythology, Dr. Okoye and I are wrapping it up all for good.
Thank you, Fred. Welcome, listeners, to Modern Mythologies. As Fred just enthusiastically noted, we are indeed finishing up the Alleyman myth in this episode. I opened my inbox to people's stories and thoughts about the myth, and I was not disappointed. Thank you for all your thoughts and all you've shared. I've pared it down a bit for time, but I'm excited for your stories.
I am too, and I want to shout out Seven Dane Asmund for Tales of the Alleyman. I loved episode 1, and episode 2 was also great last week. Can't wait to listen to episode 3, which should be coming out same time as this, I think.
Yes, he picked a most auspicious day for his episode releases.
Competition?
Friendly competition.
So if you'll recall, I already put the entirety of this myth to bed in my show, Urban Folklore, but Okoye...
I am never satisfied, right? That's what you were going to say.
I mean, yeah.
Well, you're correct. I am insatiable. Just the worst. And somehow you all put up with me. So, thanks for that.
And you interviewed an Alleyman last episode. That seemed stressful.
It was. But it was also informative.
Really?
Yes. I need to be even more open-minded than I already am, it seems. So, we are open to all the stories people send in today.
Indeed. So, would you like to let the good people know what we're in for this episode?
Yes. A longer episode than normal, for certain.
Ooh, that's exciting.
We have a dozen some messages, and I'd like to break it up into your rapid-fire discussion and points making from various fans and questions I have that I want us to answer. Because I have covered the story of the Alleyman plenty in other episodes, I want to listen to stories in the second half.
Very backwards from the Urban Folklore outline. I love it, but you're really out here bucking tradition today.
Yes, trying to be more fun and zippy.
All right, yeah. It's almost a little eerie. You didn't get body snatched, did you? Blink 3 times if you're in trouble.
On voice?
I can hear the flutter of your gorgeous lashes from a mile away.
You live in New York. That's hundreds of miles away.
Yeah, but I could hear you on the microphone. Look, it made sense when I said it.
I'm certain it did. So, I have a number of small clips I'd like to play from fans and people who care about the myth.
Hi, Dr. Okoye. It's so cool to have this chance to say hi on the show and be heard in turn. So I have really loved these episodes, and I just wanted to ask, you still haven't talked about the historical myth connections. My friend Rex has sent in some emails asking about this, like Janus, the god of passages and doors and transitions. So I wanted to ask, do you think that the Alleyman might be related to Janus or something similar, like a god of connections? Thank you.
Called out. You've said like twice now that you would love to explore those connections, and you never did.
Yes, I think the first and foremost thing I can say on the matter is the experience of mythology sliding throughout time. The stories of Jesus Christ of Nazareth mirror stories of many mythologies that's come before him.
Right.
The story of the many modern horror films reflects Back on the mythologies of campfire tales told before them, I believe that the archetype of any story or myth lives between all the myths that pay homage to it.
Sure.
In the same way that gods between polytheistic traditions have a tendency to mirror one another, in similar ways.
So instead of talking about the thing they asked about specifically, just generally say yes.
It was not a general yes.
Okay, it's cool. Hand it over to me. Yes, I think that Janus is super the Alleyman. And I remember Rex in emails. You sent it to me about the 17 thing.
Yes, I recall that.
So they had interesting ideas about 1 and 7 being similar in shape, with 1 looking straight and boring and 7 being slanted and maybe having a stronger perspective on things because it had a slanted viewpoint. Like 2 signs of change and transition between knowing and not knowing things, or looking at something and then looking at it from a new angle.
I do recall. It felt like an unresearched tangent.
Yeah, so I challenge you right now. What is research but thinking deeply on something? Finding answers and putting things together.
Well, it's looking into peer-reviewed work that exists in the world and finding support for your hypothesis, or finding it in primary sources from the topic you are looking into.
Yes, so scientific. You're really just no fun. I thought it was a cool way to look at numbers.
So, okay, another clip.
Hello, Alla and Fred. Thanks for having me on your show in a sort of time travel way.
Oh boy.
I just wanted to note that I really appreciate the way that you've handled all of these episodes. Also, Dr. Okoye, you seem really grounded, and I love how much you care about the integrity of mythology and literature.
A nice note from a fan.
Didn't you pick which ones to play?
Yes.
So you picked one where someone was nice to you.
Well, why wouldn't I? We all deserve to get nice notes from friends.
Right. Okay. Well, what about one of the clips I grabbed?
Fair enough.
Hi, my name is Felicity, and I'm a fellow New Yorker. Love your show, Fred. Dr. Okoye, you noted that in Prolix Fiddle's document from an older episode that the Alleyman may be enticed, but not summoned. As someone who would love an Alleyman encounter of her own, any advice on how one might do that?
The first thing she did was praise your show.
Well, yeah. But then she asked a question.
Well, I feel like I keep telling people I don't have practical application knowledge of the myth. But I suppose I've heard of a few ways to summon the Alleyman. Offering 17 cents down an alley is one. Or being someone the Alleyman spirits may want to inhabit may be another.
Yeah, see, I don't think your guest last episode would be down for you suggesting people get body snatched.
True.
All right. Well, come on. Let's do another.
Hello, guys. Thanks for making awesome shows to listen to on long drives. I've been thinking a lot about the Alleyman and what it would be like to meet him, and I wanted to know, what trick would you want him to perform for you if you met him?
It's tarot reading, right? I mean...
Well, I don't know. I think I could go for another.
If you talk about your nieces and their sock puppet shows again, I swear to God.
I was going to say I could go for the story where the Alleyman rolled up a joint and handed it over.
Dr. Okoye, my man, and here I thought you were a good little Catholic.
Well, God made marijuana. I am only enjoying his good creation. This is a joke, if any of my school staff or students hear it.
I don't know. I'm sticking with the tarot reading. It's just iconic, and I haven't ever had my tarot cards read.
Never?
Yeah, so actually never. And now I feel like I need the Alleyman and him alone to pop my tarot cherry.
That's a crude way to put it.
What else we got?
Hello. I really hope this reaches you and you hear it. Stop trying to reach out to the Alleyman. It's not safe. Stop talking about him. He can hear you. He listens.
Is that it? Was there more to that one?
It reminded me of joking that the Alleyman was onto us in the past.
Well, maybe I don't want a tarot reading anymore. Never mind, Alleyman, keep it. We'll stop talking about you after this episode, I promise.
I really like the ominous stories and messages I receive on this myth. It's so,
Silly?
Yes, a bit. But I do love it. And I've received far more than people realize. It comes with the territory, no matter the topic I write about. I received some very strange ones when I was talking about the Moth Children vampire myth.
Hello, Dr. Okoye. I was wondering if you've been in the AO3 tags for Alleyman yet. There is some really dirty slash fic in there, and I'm wondering if your willingness to accept all the stories extends to those as well.
Now, I picked this one because I didn't...
Because you wanted me to tell you on your show what slash fic is?
Yes.
It's porn, okay? It's just porn. I'm not going to beat around the bush on this one.
Really? That gives me a lot to think about.
Oh God, I hope not.
Well, I mean, I find it a bit surprising since some stories veer into anti-homelessness and focus on how dirty the Alleyman is. Now, do you suppose that's a fetish then?
Wanting to fuck a dirty guy?
Yes, I have to imagine that's the case. It seems like just another form of othering and very strangely exoticizing homelessness through sex.
Okay. Are you really analyzing the ethics of Alleyman smut fiction?
Well, isn't that what I do on here? Analyze the things others throw away as trivial.
That is a whole ass can of worms right there. Someone soundbite it and meme on him some more. God, sometimes you act all innocent like you don't know things, and then you just go off the other end.
Well, look, I rely on you to keep me up to date with modern language and ideas. That's all. But I think that our discussions and cultural feelings about what is taboo, which is often sex, reveal as much, if not more, than our tellings of modern myth. I'm actually very interested in where they intersect.
Okay, but I'm not showing you where to find it. Do you have a clip that isn't about porn?
Hello, Dr. Okoye. I hear you've been looking for me. No, I'm not the Alleyman, but I've been looking for him, actually. You've been talking about me, so maybe we should talk. I'll be in Chicago this week. Would you want to meet?
Absolutely not.
Well, no, I would consider meeting a fan. If distanced with masks.
Doc, that is how you get killed.
Oh, come now. I don't think that would happen.
What does he mean you've been talking about him?
Actually, that's a good question. If not the Alleyman, then who knows? I've talked about many subjects now.
Well, stranger, Dr. Okoye is not looking to be murdered. Thank you.
Whoever you are, please feel free to email me at profokoye@modernmyth.live and we will find the time to talk. I always make time for students and fans.
All right, but I'm flying down from New York and keeping you safe for me.
Honestly, Fred. Next clip.
All right.
Greetings from Missouri. I really love the show, and I'm in love with the Alleyman. I think that the Alleyman is a nice spirit, so I don't think that the man you had on last week was the real deal. The Alleyman wouldn't hurt people it inhabits like that. It's here to be kind and supportive and care for people.
I haven't heard people say much about whether or not they believe the Alleyman I spoke to.
Right. Most people just thought his story was interesting.
Right, so it's interesting to see the
warriors for wholesomeness come out in force. That guy was just too mean to the spirit who hijacks his body. Screw him.
No. But it reminds me of people who talk about angels and oracles. They rarely enjoy when occult or paranormal discussions explore unsavory elements like this. And I don't lack understanding for that.
No, you're right. There are people who hate that stuff. But I thought, I don't know. I thought his interview was compelling, like super interesting. And it wasn't kind or loving, but it was a take we hadn't thought about. What does it do to the people who experience it?
I think that's such a funny piece of this. In my book, in all my research, one of the key questions I ask and seek to answer is how the myths interact with the day-to-day lives of people who live among them.
Right.
If this involved the hunting, I would ask the people how they felt being affected by the hunting. In this case, I've always viewed the Alleyman as the supernatural being, so my interest was in people who interacted with it.
Which is so interesting because you were into the Percy McClay Ortiz story even when I wasn't. And in that, there was a person clearly being inhabited by something. I'm surprised you didn't try to reach out to speak with her, the actress. What was her name?
Julia.
Yeah, why didn't you reach out to interview her?
Well, I suppose I was just too busy. I had so many messages coming in, and with my students' work, it just seemed impossible to keep up with it at the height of it all.
Well, maybe that's the next phase of your show. People who have been inhabited.
I hope not. I hope not.
So, moving on. So, over to the Reddit, I said I was going to ask you what you think is a proper Alleyman story. Because you said that Seven's Tales of the Alleyman wasn't a proper story. So?
I just meant that it circumvented the mythology to turn it into a radio drama. He invented new rules for the myth and made it a group reading that, to an unclear extent, shared an entire scene from the past.
But to an unclear extent, how do you mean?
Yeah, well, yes, meaning I do not know if it was diegetic, meaning, was it...
Did they actually see the scene unfold and hear their own voices talking? Or was that just for the audience? And what they actually had in the reading was the Alleyman explaining what happened.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a fair criticism, but I think it was just doing its own thing. I like what he's doing with the coin toll system. Like, you can make bargains with this being like it's a Faustian demon.
We differ there.
Oh, whoops. Spoilers if you haven't gotten that far in the show. My bad. So the stories.
Yes. So, first, we have Pixelectra's story, the train story. It was shared on the Reddit in the past, but they've shared it again now, recorded. I want to make an amendment first. I said I would share Prolix Footle's images on an old episode, but I will include those in this episode's Reddit post. My apologies. Pixelectra shared an image of the cards and coins, so I'll include that as well.
Okay, I think I vaguely remember this story from the Reddit.
Hi, I'm Pixelectra, or at least that's what I'm known as on social media. I really don't feel like giving my real name because it's a little bit too weird, and I don't want to be dealing with any possible repercussions, especially since this happened while I was at work. This was some 7 years ago. I had just moved into this huge city. It was Houston. My money was running out, so I had to take whatever job that I could find, and the job happened to be that of a train operator, which is something that I would have never, ever imagined myself doing. Well, anyhow, 7 years ago, I became a train operator, and as a rookie, I had to go on the extra board, which is where all rookies go. We don't have our own set schedule, so we just have to report at whatever time they tell us to report, and they'll place us wherever they need an operator placed. Well, anyhow, that one morning, I was scheduled to do an early morning pullout. And all the way, when I pulled the train out and all the way down to downtown, I had no passengers. Anyhow, the terminal point downtown, that's a no clearance and no trespass area that's above a bayou and it's under an overpass. It's just for trains only. So I guess you can call it a train alley. Anyhow, as I said, I had no passengers. But because I made the mistake of drinking the coffee at the station office, I had to get off the train and go to the break room shack. That was not too far away from the train track, and to get rid of the coffee. Now, when I got off the train, I had the train locked and secured. When I got back on it and made my way to the opposite end of the train so that I can set it up for a departure back, I noticed that there was a sleeper on board the train. It's like, what the fuck? How did he get on the train? Especially since all the doors were locked. I couldn't tell what he looked like because he was slumped over. He had a dirty gray hoodie pulled over his head, which was tucked into the grimy and threadbare black overcoat that he wore over the hoodie. I couldn't see his hands or his face. Anyhow, because I was still new to the job, I was afraid to put this call over the radio, because I was afraid that I was going to get in trouble for allowing a passenger to be on the train in that no-revenue train alley zone. So I figured I'd let the guy, I think it was a guy, sleep on the train, and that when I got to the other end of the line, I would wake him up and inform him, hey, we're at the end of the line, we need to get off. Well, the rest of the trip back to the end of the line was uneventful, which was not surprising because it was at dark 30. I stopped at every platform, opened the doors, and closed them just as a guy was supposed to do, and every single platform was empty. So when I got to the end of the line, I started walking back to the opposite end, figuring I'd wake up the sleeper, and imagine my shock and surprise when I saw he wasn't there. What the fuck? Again? The thing is, the weirdness did not stop, because in the seat where he sat, there were some items that were not there when I did my pre-trip inspection. There were 4 coins, a dime, a nickel, and 2 pennies, and 3 picture cards. They weren't regular cards, not even tarot cards, which I actually enjoy collecting even though I can't read them to save my life. One of the cards was one of these religious cards, and it had the image of Saint Therese of Lisieux. The other card was an image of Frida Kahlo's painting Girl with a Death Mask. And the third card showed this little blonde girl in an old-fashioned swimsuit holding a stick that she was leaning against and standing on the shore where the ocean waves were crashing. I quickly scooped up all the items and I stashed them in one of the zippered pockets of my lunchbox. I was kind of rattled, but at the same time, excited by this discovery. When I got home, I put all the items in a wooden box that held some of my mementos. I didn't dare mention this to any of my coworkers, let alone ask them for their feedback. I've been at other jobs where I was bullied and because I was a little bit weird, so I kind of wanted to avoid having the same thing happen at this new job. Eventually, I forgot about this, and when I moved across town, the wooden box got tossed into the moving box where it remained for a long time. And then several years later, my nephew came across some old family photos that he scanned and emailed to me. And when I was opening up the attachments, there was that same little girl standing by the ocean. And holy motherfucking Christ, that little girl was me. The photo was taken shortly after we moved into this country in 1963. As you can expect, I'm freaking out right now. I dug out the moving box from the closet in the spare bedroom and I extracted the wooden box. My hands were trembling as I opened the wooden box, and there inside was the same image. The image that I found on the train years ago. Holy fucking shit. And then it was shortly after that I came across the Alleyman myth. with people having chance encounters with some sketchy, mysterious stranger who offered them card readings for 17 cents, which weirdly enough appeared in their pockets, even though they had no change in their pockets before these encounters. Well, this is where it really got confusing, especially since I never interacted with that sleeper who had mysteriously appeared and disappeared on my train. I suppose the picture cards that I found on the seat of the train could have been the reading, but what was the deal with me also finding 17 cents along with the cards? Wasn't I supposed to give him the 17 cents? Anyhow, this is like getting stranger and stranger. So I started looking into seeing what these three images together would mean. Saint Therese of Lisieux, I'm kind of stumped with that one. I mean, she was a young, devout girl who led a very spiritual life, and she really insisted on her going on her goal to get into the convent. And so this was somebody who already had her mind set on that she's going to lead a religious life. Well, fuck, that's not me. I mean, I was raised Catholic, but I have nothing to do with that religion anymore, or any religion for that matter. So I was kind of stumped as to why that card was there. And I'm still trying to find a way to trying to knit together the message. With the Frida Kahlo's Girl with a Death Mask, that Frida painted that when she had lost her baby. And so, okay, me standing at the seashore. God, I'm just trying to put all of these together. And the only thing that I can think of is that I lost my childhood. You see, I had gone through a divorce to a narcissist. Except I didn't know I was married to a narcissist, but I'm not going to get into that shit right now, but I'll just say I went through that divorce, and as I'm going through the healing process, I'm having stuff uncover my childhood. And when I think back upon it, it really was not a happy one. My father was an alcoholic. My mother was constantly yelling at him. My sister, whom later was actually also a narcissist, but I didn't know it then because I did not know what a narcissist was. I just, was this sensitive little kid born into this very toxic and dysfunctional family, and I bought into the lie that ours was a close and loving family, and that when I actually saw close and loving families, they seemed like they came from another planet. So now the meaning that I'm stitching together from these three cards is that I am, in doing my healing work, I am grieving the loss of my childhood. And for some reason, the card of me standing at the ocean holding that stick, it kind of looks like the Two of Wands. That is kind of weird because and the Two of Wands, the guy's holding a globe in one hand and a wand in another hand, and then there's another wand. But there's only one wand. There's no globe. It's just this little kid holding a stick looking out over the water. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm trying to think about what this could mean. I just think it's just got to be having something to do with looking ahead, grieving my childhood, but looking ahead. And Saint Teresa, I have no idea. Maybe she's just there to guide me, to have me not give up, and just to keep seeing the beauty and the good amidst all the ugliness. Take it for what it is. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I think I really like this one because it's so undramatic. It's got ghost show reenactment vibes. There's some Scooby-Doo shit going on. It's such a realistic story that is very human.
Yes, it veers away.
It veers away from the Alleyman story to her own real life quick. And we kind of just learn more about her than
the myth. Yes, as she pieces together her reading, she comes to reveal a great deal about herself. And that grounds the story so much more.
The idea that the Alleyman had a picture of her, though.
It's pretty strange.
Yeah, strange, right? It feels kind of like the straw that breaks the camel's back.
How do you mean?
You said this in your last episode about how there are good and bad stories, and I've argued with you before that they're all equally part of the same story.
Oh,
but
wait. Are you agreeing with me?
Yeah, kind of, at least on this. I watch all those My Ghost Story TLC, PBS, whatever shows. The ones on the History Channel where they share their ghost story and there's a dramatic reenactment. And that's always silly. And when I watch those, they always get to a point where you've invested and it seems real, and then they say something that just goes too far. And I don't believe them anymore.
I know what you mean. But I feel this is unfair of you, of all people, to say. You and Kaylee and the Alleyman and Seven all keep telling me I need to be more accepting. Having you come around to my viewpoint after all this feels like walking backwards.
Maybe, but it still seems a bit weird, right? Have there been stories of the Alleyman having something that belongs to someone?
Well, in a certain video, there was the receipts, yes.
Yeah, but she didn't have the receipt in the first place. He didn't get something she had. It was something she would want.
Sure, but it's similar. And the puppet show gave a name that was...
Yeah. That was about them, but it wasn't something that belonged to them, right? Like, this is a childhood photo of the person. It crosses a line to me.
Crosses a line for you?
Yeah, it does. I know what you're getting. It crosses the line of what the Alleyman does. He's kind of a supernatural in an oracle sense, not like supernatural in I went into your baby book and stole this picture of you as a kid. It's really more like it's like stalker behavior.
Right. That's something we've said about him a number of times, that he seems to work like a stalker.
Yeah.
But an interesting story, nonetheless. Thank you, Pixelectra. So, Mark from Rock Creek, Ohio.
Hey there, my name's Mac. I'm from Rock Creek, Ohio. Longtime listener, first-time caller. I didn't even have anything to call about until literally yesterday, so thank you for this opportunity for me to put in my 17 cents. Anyway, actually, if I'm being completely honest, I didn't even expect to be listening again until after this whole Alleyman craze blew over. Like the Instagram stream that went viral, it didn't sit right with me. Both the situation and just like the premise, the character. I don't know, like I'm interested in tarot a little bit, but more in like a storytelling, symbolism, subconscious kind of way. Definitely not this like vaguely specific flavor of a card reader. And again, the circumstances within and surrounding the stream felt it like a bit misplaced and also kind of personal to me. Like, I don't need to get into it. We all have stuff. Anyway, it just wasn't my cup of tea, so I figured I'd sit this one out. It wasn't even a problem. I'd fallen behind on Urban Folklore, so I could use my usual podcast time of washing dishes to catch up. And that was going fine until the beginning of the month when you uploaded your exclusive interview. I had avoided all things Alleyman like a dark alley itself, but a scoop from essentially the source seemed like just the kind of show that I'd be willing to see. Well, listen to, But yeah, I still wanted context beforehand, so I started from where I left off. And yep, I was hooked, lined, and sank. It just, I don't know, clicked. I credit you, Dr. Okoye, as I usually do. The literary connections, the narrative explanations, and even like those tarot readings in the accounted encounters made them all like stories within a story about stories, which is so my jam. I did back the Kickstarter, but I mean, I probably would have missed it if I didn't dive so deep down the rabbit hole. Oh yeah, I even remember that reading too. The one that Seven posted on Tumblr that day. It was because the rabbit. It was the Black Moon, and it was the Gloaming, and then the Six of Swords. Something about playing a game with the universe and poorly written fan fiction about your future. My future, you know what I mean. But I'm really excited for these cards. They seem like a perfect mix of curated art while also not taking itself too seriously. Like, this will be my first tarot deck, so I'll finally have an excuse to learn more about the symbols and stuff before they arrive. Especially since, like, each card is going to have its own story, so I'm curious to see how, like, those overlap with their symbolic meanings and stuff, and it just feels like I opened this, like, portal of narrative possibilities. I can't wait to see what new paths I'll incorporate into my own storytelling. Yeah, speaking of storytelling, oh my gosh, I am so sorry for rambling like that. I have no idea how long these should be, so, like, just edit all this out and put the story part in. Anyway, so I was walking on my way to work yesterday when
Okay, that's produced.
So certain.
The audio weirdness, that's what you talked about in episode 1 on this, right? And come on, you wouldn't have believed that in any universe. Like, if we got on the trend of multiverses and I found a version of you that believed anything, even that one wouldn't believe this.
Well, no, you're right. But I really enjoyed this one because it is so weird, right?
Sure.
It approaches the whole thing from such a strange angle. Then it escapes before it ends. Or before it begins, perhaps.
Ah, you're dissecting the intent.
Of course. That is generally what I do with any story.
To see if it passes your bar for intentional and earnest storytelling.
That is a great choice of words. Yes, there is an earnestness to this, an intended and clear decision to set it up in this way. It makes me wonder if the words of the story themselves are myth and subject to guessing and wondering after.
Do you think they were thinking all that, or just doing some fun, like, audio editing?
I don't see why it can't be both.
Yeah.
It truly made me think of Seven's tales of the Alleyman. With the whooshing noises between modern times and past events, there was a clear intention to create artificial noise over certain sections of what Mac shared with us.
Sure.
And, that set up those elements about story and meta-story to be strange and touched by the Alleyman, as was the inevitable story.
So you actually liked that one?
I did, yes.
Did it help that Mac called you, like, the king of myth in it?
Yes, I suppose it didn't hurt.
All right, Harry the Hat.
Yes, Harry the Hat then.
Back around 1980, I was working as a cocktail waitress at a comedy club in San Francisco. There was this sweet guy there, his name was Harry. He was one of those magician comic fellas. He was pushing 30, and obviously he'd been at this a while. In those days, everyone was trying to catch lightning in a bottle the way that Robin Williams had, Get discovered, get a television show, get famous, get paid. Harry was no different, but it just wasn't happening for him in San Francisco. As a side job, he'd hustle cards and do street magic in the alley behind the club on his nights off. He's a sweet guy, probably too level-headed to be mixed up in the nightclub business, but even back then I was smart enough to stay out of people's aspirations. One night I'm locking up after work, and there's Harry sitting in the alley in this daze, looking like he slept in his clothes. Before I could call out to him, he turned to look at me with an expression I still remember, plain as day. I asked him if he was all right, and he said he wasn't sure, I didn't have long to figure out what to do, but he was a kind man. He had never given me any trouble, and obviously something had happened to him, so I asked him if he needed to crash on my couch that night. He managed to look even more stunned somehow. He glanced down at something he had in his hands, and he said, okay. So it was 4 a.m, but I still stayed up to make him something to eat, and after that he looked more like himself again. I want to tell you something, he said, but I don't think you'll believe me. Try me, I said. So the night before, he had had this dream. He had gone to the alley to run a few games when a strange guy was there in his space. He had greeted Harry by name and told him he had a proposition for him. Let me ride along with you for a night, and I'll repay you with the chance you've been waiting for. When he woke up, Harry said he didn't think anything of it. He went out to the alley as usual and set up his table, only along with his normal cards, there was another odd-sized and much larger deck. And though they weren't his, he remembered seeing them before because they were in that dream. He says he remembers nothing after he touched them. The next thing he knew, hours had gone by, the club was closed, and there were 2 cards with notes on the back left on the table. He laid one out for me. It was a card that had an illustration on the front and said Wheel of Fortune, but someone had taken one of those I Heart New York stickers and stuck it right in the middle of the wheel. His note on the back simply said, thanks for the ride, kid. Try New York. He said he had been thinking about switching coasts to see if it would help his career, but he had not told a soul. He had no idea what the rest of it meant. And I said, well, what about the other card and note? Maybe that'll tell you something. And he looked at me again, that same haunted look, and he said, I'm sorry, this still kind of makes me cry. He said, they'll tell me nothing. It's for you. He handed me this card. It had this business name on the front I wasn't familiar with, and a phone number on one side, and a note on the back. And the note on the back said, when she offers to help you, this is hers. Right? So, okay. So even though it was on my shitty couch, Harry wound up sleeping like the dead that night, and I did not sleep at all. He thanked me the next day and left, just like the gentleman he always had been with me. I called the number, and it was an employment agency. I nearly dropped the phone. I was ready for my seedy waitressing days to be over, but I had no idea how I was going to get myself out. I wound up with an interview the next day, and in 2 weeks, I had put in my notice. I only saw Harry in person one time after that. He came in on one of my last days to say bye and let the manager know he was moving to New York City. Less than a year later, he was doing guest spots on SNL, and from there he blew up so big. I've never forgotten him or that story. I wrote it down the next day, but honestly, I would have remembered it perfectly regardless. I had never heard of the Alleyman until Dr. Okoye's podcast, but I've come to believe that's who borrowed Harry that night in 1980. I firmly believe he spent the night in Harry's alley, used him as a vessel for whatever reason, and then paid him an opportunity which Harry was smart enough to grab. I'm not really sure how I factored into it, but there is no denying the card I was given was life-changing for me too.
I love this because it's like sometimes here, your Alleyman from last time. It's about the performer. It's tangential to the Alleyman possession experience itself. It's just neat.
It certainly helps that the narrator read it so warmly.
Yeah, that's a radio show host voice right there.
Yeah, truly.
What, is it that you don't have anything to say?
Well, I think it's a lovely story, and I of course looked up Harry the Hat and did find some of this to be true. At least the showbiz thing.
See?
And starting from the bottom, it feels very placed in the world.
And that's bad to you now?
Well, no, it just felt so convincing and, well put together.
I repeat.
Last episode, my Alleyman told me that I will always listen to stories told by good storytellers and, ignore those who have real stories because they present them poorly or less believably, I should say.
Yeah.
And this was presented expertly. It feels written and edited and perfected. The delivery was smooth. It hits notes that make me feel like I'm in an apartment in a rough town and finding comfort with friends where I can. It feels true in such a deep sense of feeling.
So now you're scared of good stories.
Well, I suppose that's one way to say it.
So what's left?
I have one more story set aside.
All right, let her rip.
Hi, Fred and Dr. Okoye. I listened in on the episode of Urban Folklore where you were on to talk about this whole Alleyman thing. I tend to listen to Fred's shows when I'm drawing. There's like just enough little clippable moments to keep my brain busy while my hands work. And it just, it really works out. But when I listened to the episode... Sorry, cats. Anyways, but when I listened to your episode, I heard you talking about Percy McClay Ortiz and the Plays of Colorado podcast. I've never... I don't dislike theater. I just don't generally go to it. But the way you explained it, and we're trying to connect it to the Alleyman, it got me interested. I first went back to your first episode on the Alleyman to get some context. Then I realized I pretty much had everything I needed to know from the Urban Folklore episode, so I went and found Percy's podcast. The reason I was interested was because you said it was in Colorado, and I live there. When I realized that she had gone to the theater in Littleton, I realized it was like fate or something. That's the city I'm in, so I had to go. The story she shared was so strange. I really like weird fiction, like Thomas Ligotti and Lovecraft and stuff. So I wanted to take part, in something. So I saw the tale of the Lonesome Widower. I barely remembered Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, to be honest, and I don't speak Spanish, so about half the lines really just kind of meant nothing to me. I will agree with Percy's summation, though, that even if you don't understand Spanish or Middle English, it's still really pretty sounding, so I don't know, I just kind of jived with the sounds on stage. When the show was over, I really awkwardly made my way to the stage and ran into, you guessed it, Percy McClay Ortiz, and the lead actress, Julia Horn. Once I got there, I was so incredibly awkward, and I had no idea what to say. What was I supposed to say? I'm here to see you get possessed by a spirit. So I made small talk, said that I heard about the play from Percy's podcast, and they invited me out for drinks. I don't drink, so I declined, and stood there really awkwardly after they left. I don't know what I expected, but I waited at the side of the stage for something to happen. For a good 10 minutes, it felt like the waiting around was just totally in vain. Everyone had left the auditorium. Some tech hands were still moving things around and cleaning up. That was pretty it. And, as the theater grew darker and some overhead lights were turned off, I just kind of sat down in the seats and looked up at the stage. I tried to imagine what Percy had explained. I looked up at the overhead rafters to the lights. They seemed empty. I looked at the stage. I imagined that I was sitting in just the same seat as her, where Percy saw this strange, impromptu play. That was when the theater went really dark, almost pitch black. And I wear all black, so it's not a surprise that in the dark seating area no one noticed me. But there was still one light left on, a single light overhead, one of those spotlights, pointed at the stage. And it just felt like... It felt like how you described the sound thing with the Alleyman. The space had shifted or changed. I was suddenly no longer waiting. No, it was now I was in anticipation. It took another moment still, but someone did emerge from the back of the stage. The man was in long gray robes, and he wore a mask. It was half yellow and half white, but otherwise it was pretty featureless. when he began performing, I looked around the theater, wondering if he knew I was even there, if he was performing for someone else. But I didn't see anyone. He was announcing himself like he was a king entering a room. Then he reached out to me personally and asked how I would acquit myself. I don't know if it was because I was thinking about the myth or because something in the way he asked me told me, but I reached into the pocket of my hoodie and I found it. 43 cents. Quarter, dime, nickel, and 3 pennies. I don't actually remember getting up to give it to him, but somehow I remember setting it in the palm of his gloved hand. The gloves were white and clean, but they were really rough, like a long-used stage costume. He said, "This is the memento," when he took the change from me. And I don't know, I guess I felt scared. I was sitting a few rows back before I got up to give him the money, but when I sat down now, I was in the front row, and I didn't get what Percy meant when she said that people looking at you from the stage is weird when you're in the audience, but being in the front row is heavy. There's nothing between you and the play. And this wasn't even a play. The man started monologuing, but it somehow sounded more like a chant. I'm a comic artist, like little web comics, and I've been struggling lately with what to work on, what to write or draw, like either really. And he said some things that really, I don't think they were meant for me. They feel like a weird burden he gave me. Unlike Percy, I remember every single moment of the play. God, I remember every line. With these brine hands, I deliver your skin. He said that there were no props, but I remember him lifting a face from the barrel when he said that. This taut skin between his fingers as he rang out the brine. He was the face maker, the purveyor of masks, the performer. So, I know what I'm working on next, and I'll send you a copy when it's done. Thank you.
Someone followed up on the one you couldn't let go of.
Yes, it felt very much like the one that's got away.
So do you think that you picked this one because it emboldened your belief that the first one was indeed an Alleyman story? Doesn't make you question if it only came to exist because you drew attention to it?
Like I directed the myth to that theater because I was so focused on it? A follower did a story about it because I showed interest? Perhaps.
Some of these get a bit dark. It's kind of awesome. Like, I'm a big spooky movie fan. Ghosts, serial killers, the whole 9 yards.
Yes, you like your horror films, I know.
Oh, like you don't eat them up for your books. Hey, want to start a podcast where we just review horror movies?
Absolutely. Sign me up.
I can't tell if you're being serious right now.
Just how I like it. So, those are the stories I picked for this final episode. I thank everyone for submitting, and please keep sending your Alleyman encounters. Even as I move on to new topics, I enjoy reading them. And I suppose this is where we make our announcement. Fred?
We're pregnant.
I'm cutting that.
No, don't. Come on.
We're writing a book together, and my publisher has already paid in advance for its release.
There and back again. An Alleyman tale.
No.
You said maybe yesterday.
I said no. And maybe that's you didn't hear me when I said no the first time.
Alleyman 2 Electric Boogaloo?
We are writing a book on the Alleyman myth and phenomenon
Right.
to be published with Silver Street Books in November this year.
I actually suggested we write it when Dr. Okoye did his first episode on the topic.
Mm-hmm. I did begin writing it then. I could tell this would be bigger than...
Definitely bigger than any other topic you've covered. Probably bigger than most of the ones I've even covered.
Indeed. So, that is our announcement. All of these episodes and more will come together with additional research and stories I never got a chance to share and be released as a book. I feel that all the things I wanted to explore will coalesce into its pages.
Yeah, and I'll be there to add some colorful language. They can still hang around and wait for the gender reveal party, though, right?
And Fred Pennyland will be there to offer his incredible expertise on the topic.
Are you sure we're not pregnant with all the love you keep sending my way?
Very funny, Fred.
But honestly, it has been a very fun ride, both here and over on Urban Folklore. Thanks for having me along.
Absolutely. Honestly, thank you so much for joining me on it. My dear mythologians, the Alleyman mythology has given us fertile ground to explore. Every episode on this topic has given me new thoughts on what it is I do here on this show, what is right to do, what is fair to do, and how I should approach all myths into the future. I have been doing this for many years as an academic, but I am much more rarely joined by my fellow academics in my modern folklore journeys. We are all always still learning as human beings, growing as people. I believe I have grown through this as well. As a researcher, I will give more space for people's stories and do my best to be more careful in how I participate in supporting or dismissing the stories of others. I will do my best to remain an impartial observer, outside the myth and looking in. So thank you for coming along with me, and I hope to see you in the comments of my next topic, which I have yet to select. So feel free to share your thoughts on what that topic should be. As always, thank you for listening.
Cool. I'll get you these files this afternoon.
I saw the Alleyman every night this week. He broke my street lamp with a baseball bat. He's been walking the sidewalks every night, tearing down posters on power poles and stapling up introductions to his weird theater show. I know it was him because he leaves a trail of tarot cards on the sidewalk that are all ruined by the morning dew by the time I wake up. I'm gonna try to meet him tonight.
I met the Alleyman in an airport while I was waiting after my flight got stranded and I was trying to find a way home. Did a reading for me and showed me the Four of Keys. Never saw that tarot card before. 4 calls later, I'd finally found a car to get myself home. Doctor, I don't know what the Alleyman is any better than you do, but I don't think he's natural, but I do think he's here to help. Just in case, I say everyone keeps 17 cents in their pockets at all times.
So I met the Alleyman, Dr. Okoye. I definitely met him. He had the deck and everything. He asked me for 18 cents, and he nodded and put the deck away. So I asked what that meant, what the trick for a take was. He just chuckled and left. Dr. Okoye, what does it mean? Am I alright? I keep seeing him. Is that okay?
Hey y'all, I'm recording this for posterity, I guess, and I'm honestly just hoping someone will see this and be able to help me. Something happened last night, and I don't know how to even start to process it. It's going to be kind of long, so buckle in, and it's going to take me a minute to really get to the point, because last night was a long night. And it wasn't until the very end that things got bad. But I think the whole story is important to tell. I'm afraid if I leave out a detail of the night, it could be something important.
The Alleyman Podcast is a podcast produced, written, and directed by Seven Dane Asmund of Publishing Goblin LLC and licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike International License. The Alleyman character was created by Seven Dane Asmund and is based on the character created by them for the Alleyman's Tarot.
I'm John Dingo, and I produced the intro and bed music.
Outro music produced by Seven Dane Asmund.
I'm Uduak Inyang, and I play Dr. Ala Okoye.
I'm Bill Patterson, and I play Fred Pennyland.
And in this episode, many stories and small fan snippets were shared. Some of them were from real people. Some of them were written for the show and performed. This is a list of the actors who helped out by running some of the lines.
Sebastian Black.
Viditya Voletti.
Caith Aaron.
Mylee.
Quinne Guthrie.
Lauren Maddox. And you're watching the Disney Channel.
Grim Malkin.
Kandi J. Williams.
Okada Takuma. And myself, Seven Dane Asmund. The podcasts Modern Mythologies and Urban Folklore are fake podcasts, produced for the purposes of this show, as are their hosts and characters. Any relation to people, real or imaginary, is a coincidence. The version of me used in this show is a fake version of me. The Urban Folk Reddit and Dr. Okoye's email, profokoye@modernmyth.live, are real and available for you to use to reach out to the character. I will read comments and emails each week for the next episode. Please note, we do have 2 episodes left. It's not over. Please like, review, and share episodes wherever you find them, and consider donating to support this and future projects at the Publishing Goblin Patreon, or follow us on social media, all of which can be found at publishinggoblin.com. Thanks for listening.